speeding through the city or getting into shootouts with the police. Even though the visuals aren't great and the gameplay isn't super smooth, it's still playable enough for running missions, free roaming, or light gunfights. This setup is best suited for casual players who just want to have some fun and aren't too focused on PvP or fast reaction-based gameplay. If you want higher FPS and a smoother experience overall, dropping the resolution down to 720p is the way to go. At that resolution, GTA 5 Online can maintain a much more stable 45 to 50 FPS with noticeably better input response. The trade-off is lower image quality, but honestly the gameplay feels way more enjoyable. The second GPU is the GT710, also with 2GB of DDR3 VRAM. At first glance, it looks pretty similar to the GT730 I tested earlier. After checking a few reviews, it turns out the GT710 is around 30% weaker than the GT730 in terms of performance. Even though they share the same memory type and capacity, the GT710 is limited to a 64-bit memory bus. Now, the big question is, does that smaller memory bus actually have a noticeable impact on gaming performance? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's put it to the test and see how it stacks up. Switching over to the GT710, 2GB. Still at full HD resolution with the default settings, the difference compared to the GT730 is obvious immediately. FPS now sits at around 7 to 9, which is about 5 FPS lower than the GT730 under the same conditions. At this point, the game is basically a slideshow. Movement feels clunky, and input latency is extremely high, making everything respond very slowly. After lowering the settings down to normal on the GT710, 2GB, performance does improve noticeably, but it's still far from stable. Average FPS climbs to around 40, but the 1% lows are quite low, so stuttering still happens, especially when moving quickly or when there are a lot of objects on screen. At this level, the experience is only suitable for slow-paced gameplay or simple missions. Fast driving or constant shootouts still feel pretty frustrating. It wasn't until I dropped the resolution down to 720p that things finally became more playable. FPS nearly doubled, reaching around 40 FPS during normal movement. When driving at high speeds, FPS drops to around 30, and it can dip even lower when there are lots of effects or complex scenery. Next up, we have a GPU that was released about 13 years ago, the GT630. If this thing were a person, it would probably be in middle school by now. The specs aren't anything special, it only comes with 1GB of DDR3 VRAM, and back in the day, it was positioned as an entry-level dedicated graphics card, basically for PC users who wanted something better than integrated graphics. No gaming monster here, but let's see how it holds up today. When I first loaded into the game, I was shocked. The temperature shot up past 100 degrees almost instantly.